Stop and look at your life for a second. Have you ever felt like you're playing a high-stakes game where everyone else was given the rulebook, but you were handed a manual for a completely different sport? You followed the instructions perfectly. You sat in the classrooms, you memorized the dates, you passed the exams, and you collected the diplomas. You did everything right. Yet you find yourself standing on a treadmill that never stops, working harder and harder, only to stay in exactly the same place. Most people call this adulthood, but Robert Kiyosaki calls it a trap. Here is the uncomfortable truth that your boss, your bank, and your government hope you never realize. The reason you aren't wealthy isn't a lack of effort or intelligence. It's because you were meticulously programmed to stay poor. Our modern education system was never designed to produce masters of capital. It was built by the industrial era to produce high-level cogs for a massive machine. It was designed to create the perfect employee, someone who is smart enough to do the paperwork, but too afraid to question the paycheck. We are peeling back the curtain today on the financial education that was intentionally hidden from you. We're going to explore the radical philosophy that turned a young boy from Hawaii into a billionaire, uncovering why your PhD-level teachers might be the last people on earth you should take advice from. You'll see how a simple childhood board game like Monopoly contains a more potent wealth-building formula than any university degree ever could. There is a fundamental secret to money that divides the world into two camps: those who are slaves to the dollar and those who own the systems that create it. By the end of this video, you will understand the 5-word question that can rewire your brain for abundance and why working for a paycheck is actually the most dangerous financial move you can make. If you've ever felt like the system was rigged against you, you're right, but today the game changes. It's time to stop being a pawn and start learning how to play by a different set of rules. Think back to the thousands of hours you spent sitting at a desk. You learned how to solve for x in a quadratic equation. You memorized the rise and fall of empires, and you were taught the exact chemical composition of a leaf. But did a single teacher ever sit you down and explain how a bank works? Did they ever show you how to read a financial statement or explain the difference between an asset that feeds you and a liability that bleeds you? The silence on the topic of money in our schools is not an accident. It's a design feature. When Robert Kiyosaki asked his father, the head of education, why money wasn't on the curriculum, he hit a wall of cold reality. His father's answer was simple. The government tells us what we can teach. You see, the school system was never meant to produce the person who owns the factory. It was built to produce the person who works in it. It rewards obedience, punishes mistakes, and measures your worth by your ability to memorize and repeat. In that environment, financial literacy is a dangerous subject. If students understood how debt really worked, if they knew how the wealthy use taxes as a tool rather than a burden, the supply of cheap, compliant labor would vanish overnight. This is the schoolroom paradox. We go to school to learn how to make it in the real world, yet the one thing that drives the real world, capital, is the one thing we are forbidden from discussing. We're told to get a job as if a job is the destination, rather than a temporary means to an end. Robert's poor dad saw a job as security. His rich dad saw a job as a trap for the mind. While one was teaching him how to write a resume to get a position, the other was teaching him how to write a business plan to create thousands of them. The question you have to ask yourself is, are you still following the syllabus of a system that was designed to keep you small? Because as long as you believe that good grades lead to good money, you're playing a game that was rigged before you even sat down. To understand how wealth is built, you have to look at the world through two completely different lenses. Robert grew up caught between two worlds, standing at the crossroads of two conflicting philosophies. On one side was his biological father, a man with a PhD, a pillar of the community, and a high-ranking government official. This was his poor dad. On the other side was his best friend's father, a man who never finished the 8th grade but was a self-made titan of industry. This was his rich dad. The difference between them wasn't the amount of money in their bank accounts, it was the way they viewed the very concept of a job. His poor dad represented the employee mindset. To him, a job was the ultimate goal. It meant security, a steady paycheck, and the comfort of being taken care of by a company or the state. He believed that if you worked hard enough and climbed the corporate ladder, you'd eventually find peace. But this path has a hidden cost. You are trading your most valuable, non-renewable resource, your time, for a fixed sum of paper. You are building someone else's dream while your own sits on a shelf. Rich Dad, however, looked at a paycheck and saw a drug. He argued that the moment you become addicted to a salary, your brain stops seeking out-of-the-box solutions. He taught Robert that an entrepreneur doesn't work for money. They work to build assets that generate money. The entrepreneur doesn't need to be taken care of because they own the system. This is the fundamental divide that persists today. Most people spend their lives perfecting the art of being a specialist, becoming the best doctor, the best lawyer, or the best accountant. But while they are mastering a craft, they are often financially illiterate. They know how to earn money, but they have no idea how to keep it or multiply it. The two paths isn't just a choice of career. It's a choice of identity. One path leads to the comfort of the herd, where you are safe until the company decides you are an overhead cost. The other path leads to the uncertainty of the jungle, where you must hunt for your own success. But you are the only one who holds the keys to your cage. At 9 years old, Robert Kiyosaki made a deal that would change his life forever, but it started with a slap in the face. After asking his rich dad to teach him about money, he was put to work scrubbing floors and picking up cigarette butts in a small grocery store. The pay, absolutely nothing. Now, most people would call that a crime. His poor dad certainly did. But his rich dad had a much more profound motive. He told Robert, "The moment I pay you, you start thinking like an employee. That is the trap. You see, a paycheck acts as a sedative for your ambition. When you know a specific amount of money is hitting your bank account every Friday, your brain's survival instinct goes quiet. You stop looking at the world for opportunities and start looking at the clock." By forcing Robert to work for free, Rich Dad was forcing his mind to stay hungry, to stay sharp. He was stripping away the employee crutch to see if the entrepreneurial spirit would wake up. Rich Dad's lesson was simple. Entrepreneurs don't work for money. They work for assets. While the employees in that grocery store were focused on their hourly wage, Robert was being forced to look at the business itself. He was learning how the shelves were stocked, how the customers were treated, and how the cash flowed. He was gaining an education that was worth 1,000 times more than the pennies he could have earned. This is the hardest lesson for the average person to swallow. We have been conditioned to believe that our time has a fixed price tag. $20 an hour, $50 an hour, $100,000 a year. But the wealthy know that time is a leverage tool, not a commodity to be sold. When you stop working for a paycheck, you are forced to become a problem solver. You start asking, if a boss isn't giving me money, how do I create it myself? That single shift in perspective is the exact moment the employee dies and the entrepreneur is born. It's the difference between waiting for a handout and building a kingdom. It sounds almost too simple to be true, doesn't it? Greenhouses. Eventually, he reached a tipping point. He traded in those small properties for the Red Hotel, the massive apartment complexes, the shopping centers, and eventually the Hyatt Regency in Waikiki. This is where the middle class gets it wrong. They work hard for a paycheck, and then they use that paycheck to buy liabilities that they think are assets. They buy the big house with the 30-year mortgage, the luxury car with the high interest rate, and the designer clothes. They are essentially buying red hotels before they've ever owned a single greenhouse. Urino? The wealthy do the exact opposite. They build a foundation of small cash-flowing assets first. They let their greenhouses pay for their lifestyle. If they want a Ferrari, they don't work more hours. They buy another asset until the cash flow from that asset is large enough to cover the car payment. Understanding this formula changes the way you look at every dollar that passes through your hands. Is this dollar a seed for a greenhouse, or is it a payment for a liability? In the game of life, you are either the player or the piece being moved. Which one are you? In a world drowning in information, your greatest risk isn't a lack of knowledge. It's taking the wrong advice from the wrong people. Robert Kiyosaki draws a sharp, unforgiving line in the sand between two types of mentors: the real and the fake. Think about your time in university or even your current financial advisor. Most of our teachers are people who are out of ethics. They are what Robert calls fake teachers. A fake teacher is someone who teaches a subject they don't actually practice in the real world. Your macroeconomics professor might have a PhD, but does he own a business? Your banker might give you investment advice, but is he living off his investments, or is he living off the commission he makes by selling you a mutual fund? The danger of a fake teacher is that they can only teach you what they've read in a book, not what they've learned in the trenches. They teach you how to be a safe, compliant worker, because that is all they know. A real teacher, on the other hand, is someone who does what they teach every single day. When Robert wanted to learn about taxes, he didn't go to a college professor. He went to his accountant. When he wanted to learn about law, he went to his attorney. These people weren't just lecturers, they were practitioners whose survival depended on their results. If you want to be a master of money, you have to stop listening to people who have jobs and start listening to people who have assets. Real teachers are often the ones the school system overlooks because they don't have the fancy credentials, but they have the balance sheets to prove their worth. One of the most expensive mistakes you can make is taking financial advice from people who are more broke than you are. You wouldn't take fitness advice from someone who has never stepped into a gym, so why take wealth advice from someone who is just one paycheck away from bankruptcy? To change your life, you must change your circle. You need mentors who are solving the problems you want to have, not people who are struggling with the problems you're trying to escape. We have talked about schools, assets, to be is built with questions, not excuses. The rich stay rich because they never stop asking, how? And now that you know the formula, the only question left is yours.